When Wendell Scott won a NASCAR race on December 1st, 1963 in Jacksonville, Florida, it's likely he was one of the only black people at the racetrack. By the time white racing officials decided to award Scott his winning trophy, the track was conveniently deserted.
Certainly I'm aware of some racial incidents, and there are things that I would like to kind of leave behind us.
Scott's daughter Sybil, though, clearly knows what her father accomplished as the only black man on the NASCAR circuit in the segregated South.
We have to be realistic, and he was just a determined person. He's influenced a lot of lives.
Scott opened the door, but nobody followed. Nearly 36 years after his historic victory, there still aren't many African-American fans at the races and not a single black driver at the highest level of NASCAR.
Everybody like to keep a little sports, you know what I mean? We got basketball and stuff, you know, that's how they look at it.
Last June, at a race in New Hampshire, two white employees of Winston Cup drivers, one wearing a pillowcase over his head to impersonate a Ku Klux Klan member, approached a black pit crew member in what they called a harmless prank. Both men were fired by their drivers, and NASCAR suspended them indefinitely.
I don't know what to tell you about that deal. I mean, it didn't happen to me, and I can't say very much, so I'd rather just not say anything about that.
Most people associated with the sport, both black and white whom we spoke with, consider the incident unfortunate, but not representative of the atmosphere around NASCAR.
We hope the racial climate reflects America. That's what we want the sport to reflect. I mean, we feel this is possibly the most American professional sport there is.
Yet the last African-American driver to race at NASCAR's elite level, the Winston Cup Series, was Willie T. Ribbs 13 years ago.
I did 3 Winston Cup races a while back. It was with a team that had no sponsor. We had virtually nothing to compete with. In fact, Richard Petty or Dale Earnhardt or Jeff Gordon would not have done, they wouldn't even driven what I drove.
While Ribbs has his critics who say his ride-em cowboy style of driving was too hard on the equipment, he believes that's just an excuse.
The real issue is Willie T. Ribbs can win races. He's a pioneer, and maybe we're not ready to have him in the sport. Maybe we don't want him in the sport. We don't want, because maybe we're worried about if he does well, there'll be others.
But the man they call King, Richard Petty, says despite its white Southern roots, which are still apparent right down to the Confederate flags waved by some fans at Winston Cup races today, NASCAR's an equal opportunity employer.
The door is open for anybody that wants to come, whether they're red, white, or purple. And, you know, if they can get their deal together, get sponsors together, or get drivers together, or a team together, then they're welcome to come in and try just like everybody else.
The most recent example of an African-American driving in a NASCAR race came this past summer when Bill Lester, a road course driver, filled in for an injured driver in a Busch Series race. Lester, though, is cautiously optimistic about what the future holds.
It's been very challenging. You know, sponsorship is hard to come by. I find that although I've been warmly received from the standpoint of the fans and people here in the paddock area from corporate America, it hasn't been quite as warm.
But some blacks aren't waiting for the invitation. Last July, Olympic track and field champion Jackie Joyner Kersey, encouraged by her husband Bob Kersey, who grew up a racing fan, announced they're forming a NASCAR team.
It might not happen this year, it might not happen 5 years from now, but we're going to stick with it because we do believe in what we're trying to do.
The Kerseys face long odds. The cost of a startup Winston Cup team is $8 to $10 million, and Bobby says he's already faced an additional barrier.
We have talked to 1 or 2 sponsors, to be honest with you, that they said that they have not been interested in sports this year, and it's not on their budget. And then I have read in the paper a couple of weeks later that they're sponsoring another car team. So that does bother me.
2 other black racing team owners, basketball great Julius Erving and former Redskins running back Joe Washington, have spent 2 unsuccessful years in the second-tier Busch Series, but claim it isn't their color that slowed them down.
People talk about, you know, well, there's got to be some prejudice in NASCAR. Well, the only prejudice that's in NASCAR is the fact that, hey, there's only one color that is really allowed. And if you've got green, which is money, hey, you can race. Washington is blunt in saying, quote, "This is a business, not a social advancement program."
His and Irving's car is sponsored by Dr. Pepper, and the man who drives, Mark Green, is white.
NASCAR has been trying to open its doors by developing a management program to address the needs of black drivers and others who feel they've been overlooked. Organizers, meanwhile, have mentioned internships and scholarships as possible ways of further getting minorities involved in racing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a goal to get more people involved, period. But to get more African Americans involved and other minority groups, absolutely.
NASCAR still has a long way to go in attracting black fans and participants. But perhaps as a sign of the times, Wendell Scott last April was posthumously inducted to the Motorsports Hall of Fame.